Hi there guys, it's Aaron here from Console Deals, back again with another on-camera video, this time at the start of your week, where I bring to you sad news. Because not only did the end of March bring the death of Mario in the ripping away of the Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection, and Super Mario 35 of course, but no, after weeks of speculation and rumour, PlayStation finally confirmed in an email to subscribers that it will be indeed shutting off the PS3 and PSP and PS Vita digital game stores, effectively locking off and preventing people from purchasing games from those platforms as soon as they shut it down. So I think it's worth mentioning that obviously this is a major blow to the whole digital preservation argument. PlayStation don't really show too much interest in preserving their old games, despite those games being some of my favourites. I think back to things like Secret Agent Clank and Daxter on the PSP, just fun old times. So the question is, why would PlayStation go and do this? Well, from a business perspective, you can kind of see that it kind of makes sense, because after all, while the PS3 and PS Vita platforms' digital storefronts aren't exactly thriving, I imagine, they still have the odd sale trickle through for each game every year, and this will require some tax work and general accounting to be going on in the background. That obviously requires extra manpower costs money, and now it seems like we finally reached that stage where the books aren't quite balancing, and that it's simply costing more money than PlayStation is making to keep these stores running. Couple that with their ongoing focus towards PlayStation 5 games and PlayStation 4 games to a certain extent, with the odd crossover title like Horizon Forbidden West, and you can kind of see that PlayStation wants to storm this path forward. But it only serves to highlight the fact even more of how poorly PlayStation generally handle backwards compatibility. This is particularly annoying because this is something that Xbox seemed to have cracked many years ago now. I remember at that major E3 presentation where Phil Spencer was stood on stage and he was like, "We finally found a way, we finally cracked it, we are going to bring 360 games and even original Xbox games made playable forward on the Xbox One." This of course now carries it forward again to the Series S/Series X generation of consoles, and it's really starting to make PlayStation look bad. So to get into the numbers specifically, the PlayStation Store on PS3 will be shutting down on July 2nd, locking off PlayStation 1 purchases and PlayStation 3 purchases, and then we've got the PlayStation Vita Store shutting down a little after in August. So it's from those dates onwards, you're no longer going to be able to buy new games digitally from either of those storefronts. But luckily, the latest confirmation of this news via the newsletter from PlayStation did at least confirm that you will be able to still download any game that you've purchased digitally from that date. So presumably you'll be able to access some sort of dead form of the PlayStation Store. Simply head over to the download option and you can kind of see the digital library you've built up there. As you can imagine, this move has kind of been garnering PlayStation a lot of negative feedback since the couple of hours since it's been announced, and I can see why people's frustrations only continue to build. Because after all, PlayStation have built some really good legacy titles, and outside of that really cool PlayStation 5 launch game, Astro's Playroom, I beg your pardon, they don't really seem to care about their legacy. You know, this whole 30 years of PlayStation, it doesn't really seem to matter to them, at least when it comes to their legacy games. So what can we do now? Well, obviously the biggest thing you can do now is hop onto the digital stores while you still can, top up your PlayStation wallet, and just continuing to buy the things you either planned on playing or the things you know have a physical version but will indeed ramp up in price. Because if there's one thing that's going to benefit, one factor that's going to benefit from this move, is that places like Kex and Game, the pre-owned second-hand market for these physical Vita and PlayStation 3 games will start to boom. While this is pretty good news for fans of physical games media, it does mean that the prices are going to go up. And already this morning I was looking at Kex, and because I've been dabbling for a few months now, I want to replay the original God of War games, God of War 1 and 2, and already they have it listed at £38 at Kex, whereas if you purchase them on the digital store right now, you can get it for only £20. That's still a lot for two games that came out around a decade and a half ago now, but if you're like me and you care about, retro classic games, PlayStation 2 is easily considered retro now, it might be something worth looking into. So how does PlayStation solve this mess? Well, ideally we'd like them to find a backwards compatible solution similar to what they've done on Xbox, and while I know that people are going to be mentioning PlayStation now, it's really not the same thing, guys, because while PlayStation 3 games and PlayStation 2 games are in fact playable on PlayStation PlayStation Now, either to your PS4 or your PS5. Not too sure about PlayStation Vita actually. You are in fact only streaming those games, and if you have terrible internet like I do, especially with the more fast-paced stuff like fighting games and first-person shooters, you're just not going to get that great an experience. So with that said, I just wanted to give you my thoughts on that topic, but before I go, I'm going to mention 3 games that I think you should buy before the digital stores begin closing later on this summer. I could of course go into many more games that I could recommend, but I thought I'd whittle them down to just 3 to save this video going on for an hour long. So the first game I want to mention, I've already mentioned it, is the God of War 1 and 2 collection. Not to be confused with Chains of Olympus and Ghost of Sparta on the PSP, even though I would recommend you purchase those games as well. I'd say pick up this version because it's great having games that were originally intended for the PlayStation 2 made playable on the go, and it runs absolutely brilliantly on the PlayStation Vita. God of War 2 is the best of the classic series in that franchise, before it obviously made the jump to PS3 and beyond. So I would say if you haven't played these games, or even if you have, pick up the God of War 1 and 2 collection. It's on the PlayStation Store now for $19.99. Second of all, I want to recommend Resistance Retribution. Resistance is obviously a PlayStation series that is very near and dear to my heart. Resistance 3 being a woefully underrated first-person shooter, came out on the PS3, obviously. But while I recommend you play that, I would also recommend you purchase the digital version of Resistance Retribution, because it's kind of like a 10 to 12 hour long campaign, proper third-person shooter that really showcased what a first-person, highly polished title on the PlayStation Portable could do. It's not developed inherently by Insomniac, but it wasn't instead made by Sony Bend, the guys who later went on to make Days Gone. And I would say that, Resistance Retribution is in many ways a much better, tightly focused game than Days Gone that showcases the best of that the developer can actually do. And then finally, a bit of an odd one, I would recommend Velocity Ultra, which was actually released as a PlayStation Mini back in the days of the PSN Store on PSP. And what this is basically like a side-scrolling, top-down, arcade-style shooter, but rather than just fending off waves of alien spaceships, you're actually propelling yourself forward whilst dodging all manner of obstacles and collecting items on the way. So there you have it, guys. What games would you recommend people pick up before the PlayStation storefront on PS3 and PS Vita closes later on this summer? I'd be very interested to see what people recommend, so leave it in the comments below. But until then, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. Got lots of exciting things coming up for you to indulge in over the bank holiday. But until next time, I want to thank you very much for watching, and until next time, happy gaming.